Today we're continuing with the 4th chapter of the 10th canto and the 4th chapter of Krishna Book. Kamsa has begged forgiveness from Vasudeva and Devaki, and with their permission he's returned to his home that night. It was after midnight. And then in the morning he called his ministers and his friends to tell them what transpired the night before. So when his ministers heard that he had begged forgiveness and that Durga Devi had come and said that the person who is to kill him has been born elsewhere, they began to give Kamsa advice. And although they were not very much experienced or learned, they began to give instructions to Kamsa as follows. Krishna Book, Chapter 4. After hearing their master's statement, the envious asuras, who were enemies of the demigods and were not very expert in their dealings, advised Kamsa as follows. Now, as for giving advice, Srila Prabhupada would also have that problem, and we had some experience here in Vrindavan of people giving Prabhupada advice, and this was his reaction. Everyone manufactures some idea. They cannot adjust whatever there is. Big ideas, big belly. Too many cooks spoil the broth. I do not know how to stop it. Everyone will suggest. I am your friend. I am giving you good suggestion. Break it. Do it. I am your friend. You break your head. And Prabhupada laughs. There was a Mohammedan king, Nizamuddin. There is a tomb in Delhi. He was a poet. So some friends came, he would read some writing, and the friend will suggest, why don't you make like this? Oh, it is good, all right. He'll do it, whatever he says. And when he goes away, then again makes his own. So the secretary said, why are you changing? What can I do? That is my friend, and that is nonsense. Therefore, I am again doing what I wrote. So we have to do that. As soon as you call anybody, he'll give you some suggestion. Make this alteration, make this alteration. So the big ideas and big belly. Prabhupada used to say here, big monkey, big belly. Ceylon jumping, melancholy. Because only Hanuman could jump to Ceylon, to Sri Lanka. But with their big belly, the other monkeys couldn't do it. So even Prabhupada had this problem. Now Kamsa, he's facing the same problem. But because he's asuric by nature, he took the wrong advice of his advisors. So this is the purport to that sloka that was given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. There are two different types of men, the asuras and the suras. Dvo bhuta sargo lokesmin daiva asura evacha. Vishnu bhakta smrito daiva asuras tad viparyaya, from the Padma Purana. Those who are devotees of the Lord Vishnu, Krishna, are suras or devas, whereas those who are opposed to the devotees are called asuras. Devotees are expert in all transactions. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarver gunais tatra samasate sura. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12. Therefore, they are called kovida, which means expert. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:4-30 purport. So where does this nature come from? By our desires. It's not that we choose to do particular things. When we have sinful desires, desires opposed to the Supreme Lord, we're forced to engage in asuric activity. So these asuric ministers of Kamsa, they had enmity with the demigods. And where does this enmity come from? Because amongst the demigods, or the devotees, there's one center, one Kendra, and that's the Supreme Lord. And all of the activities of demigods or devotees are centered around that one Lord Vishnu. That's why they're called Vaishnavas. But an asura, he is interested in one person only, himself. So he is not concentric, he's self-centered. And everything he does is to keep himself in the center. So therefore there's always conflict, because you have one asura with himself in the center, then you have another asura, and their interests conflict. So therefore, the interests of the asuras, who are self-centered, I, me, and mine, and the interests of the Vaishnavas, or the Devas, are entirely different. So therefore, the asuras, they want to annihilate the demigods, because they want everything for themselves, and even amongst themselves they fight.
One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods, but one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12.
So the asura, he thinks that he's the body, and therefore this attraction to the material energy, he believes that he's going to be able to enjoy by exploiting the material energy. And therefore he doesn't want to give anything or do anything on behalf of the Supreme Lord. So therefore he's called an asura.
Asuras, however, although superficially showing expertise in passionate activities, are actually all fools. They are neither sober nor expert. Whatever they do is imperfect. Moghasha moga karmanaha. According to this description of asuras given in Bhagavad-Gita 9.12, whatever they do will ultimately be baffled. It was such persons who advised Kamsa because they were his chief friends and ministers. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.30 purport. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. Bhagavad-Gita 9.12.
So it's said, birds of a feather flock together. So because Kamsa was of demoniac nature, he surrounded himself with other people of the same nature, asuras, demons, who were just interested in their own selfish motives. So they're also giving Kamsa advice according to their selfish motives. And they're using diplomacy to do that also. And we'll see. All of their plans will be foiled. Just as with Hiranyakashipu, who was the ideal demon. He almost was able to make himself immortal. He was able to conquer all the demigods. They worshipped him. But still the Supreme Lord not only killed him, even maintaining all of the benedictions given to him by the Lord's devotee Brahma, but he also killed all of his demoniac followers through the appearance of Nrsingadev.
Dear Sir, let us now make arrangements to kill all children who were born within the last 10 days in all towns, countries, villages and pasturing grounds. Let us execute this plan indiscriminately. Krishna Book, Chapter 4. If this is so, O King of the Bhoja dynasty, beginning today we shall kill all the children born in all the villages, towns and pasturing grounds within the past 10 days or slightly more. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.31.
So what did it matter to these demons? It mattered because so long as Kamsa was the king, they would remain also in power. So they wanted to maintain Kamsa to be the king for their own personal sense gratification. It's not that they cared about Kamsa. Kamsa, the night before, he admitted and he realized through knowledge that he had done some heinous activities. But now, by listening to the demoniac advice of his ministers, his mind was quickly going to be changed, because they'll praise him and they'll show him that your real interest is to kill all of these children, these new babies, and go even further than that, we'll hear.
We think that the demigods cannot do anything against us if we perform these atrocities. They are always afraid of fighting with us, and even if they wish to check our activities, they will not dare to do so. Krishna Book, Chapter 4. The demigods always fear the sound of your bowstring. They are constantly in anxiety, afraid of fighting. Therefore, what can they do by their endeavors to harm you? Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.32. When Krishna entered the mouth of Aghasura, the demigods hidden behind the clouds exclaimed, "Alas, alas, ha, ha!" But the friends of Aghasura, like Kamsa and other demons, were jubilant. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.12.29.
So the demigods, they knew how powerful these demons were, and they didn't dare to challenge them. They were hiding in the clouds. They're in the clouds because they live on Mount Meru and the other very high mountains, and those mountains are covered by clouds, so it appears that they're in the clouds. And they were watching Krishna's activities. They would come regularly to see Krishna kill the demons, and they were also very happy that Krishna was killing them. But when Aga appeared, because the demigods knew how powerful Aga was, three, there was Aga, Baka, and Putana, brothers and sisters. So they were so happy that Krishna was going to kill Aga. But when all the boys entered into Aga's mouth and then Krishna entered, they became frightened also. Ha ha, they said. But Kamsa and his demoniac friends, because they had spies, they knew what was going on, they became jubilant. Though what actually happened was, Aghasura got liberated by Krishna. He entered into Krishna's body. So that jubilation didn't last for very long.
Because of immeasurable strength of your bow, they fear you. Indeed, we have practical experience that whenever you stood to fight with them and began to shower your arrows on them, they immediately began to flee in all directions just to save their lives. Krishna Book, Chapter 4. While being pierced by your arrows, which you discharged on all sides, some of them who were injured by the multitude of arrows, but who desired to live, fled the battlefield, intent on escaping. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.33.
So now these demoniac friends and ministers are reminding Kamsa of his previous activities. Generally, when we engage in activities, it becomes habit. And those habits are very hard to break. So it was Kamsa's habit to attack and kill the demigods and the devotees, to kill little children, and to assert himself as the greatest demon. Therefore, he had all of his demoniac ministers. So these ministers, they knew just how to puff up Kamsa by reminding him of all of his great exploits in the past and how he was able to kill so many devotees and demigods, and how the demigods were so frightened of him that they fled as soon as he started shooting his arrows.
Many of the demigods were unable to fight with you, and they immediately surrendered themselves unto you by opening their turbans and the flag on their heads. With folded hands they begged you to spare them and said, "My Lord, we are all afraid of your strength. Please release us from this dangerous fight." Krishna Book Chapter 4. Defeated and bereft of all weapons, some of the demigods gave up fighting and praised you with folded hands. And some of them, appearing before you with loosened garments and hair, said, O Lord, we are very much afraid of you. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.34.
So Kamsa, just like modern day materialistic demons, they want power, they want land, they want money. So what do? They have to conquer. They have to conquer other kings, they have to conquer kingdoms, they have to ravage wherever they go. So the innocent devotees, and they're called demigods because they're devotees, they didn't want to fight, so some would flee, some would be killed, and some would surrender to Kamsa. Just like we heard how Akrura, he became the servant of Kamsa. So many of these demigods or devotees, rather than being killed or rather than having to hide, they would serve Kamsa and just were waiting until Krishna appeared.
We have also seen many times that you would never kill such surrender fighters when they were all fearful, their bows, arrows and chariots broken, forgetful of their military activities and unable to fight with you. Krishna Book Chapter 4. When the demigods are bereft of their chariots, when they forgot how to use weapons, when they are fearful or attached to something other than fighting, or when their bows are broken, and they have thus lost the ability to fight, your majesty does not kill them. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.35.
So there have been demons like this. We read about them in Srimad Bhagavatam, where even the sages had to serve these demoniac rulers. So Kamsa was like that. He was so powerful, and he had so many alliances, such as Jarasandha. Jarasandha was his father-in-law. So he made these alliances with all of the demoniac leaders around the world, and in that way became the most powerful of all the demons. And these innocent and godly Vaishnavas, either they surrendered or they were killed by Kamsa. And when they surrendered, Kamsa didn't kill them, but he did make them into his servants.
There are principles that govern even fighting. If an enemy has no chariot, is unmindful of fighting art because of fear, or is unwilling to fight, he is not to be killed. Kamsa's minister reminded Kamsa that despite his power, he was cognizant of the principle of fighting, and that he therefore had excused the demigods because of their incapability. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.35 purport.
Now everything is heating up because of the appearance of Durga Devi. So previously, Kamsa, because he was obviously an educated person, he knew about Atma. He also knew, according to Dhanurved, all of the rules and regulations for fighting, and he observed them. But now, his demoniac friends are going to advise him otherwise.
But the present emergency, the minister said, is not intended for such mercy or military etiquette. Now you should prepare to fight under any circumstances. Thus they advised Kamsa to give up the traditional etiquette in fighting and chastise the enemy at any cost. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.35 purport.
Nowadays, Prabhupada explains that the demoniac leaders, they don't go to the front of the battlefield and fight. They're sitting somewhere safely in an office, and they have mercenary or inducted, forced soldiers who must fight, who actually don't want to fight, or they're fighting just for money. And they lose their lives that way. So, but Kamsa, because he understood the rules of fighting, he would be right up at the front, and he was extremely powerful. And he would observe these laws of etiquette. But his demoniac advisors were now telling him that that's over now. Now you have to kill these demigods. There's no question of mercy. Everything, you have to chastise the enemy at any cost, and they'll explain why.
So actually we have nothing to fear from these demigods. They are very proud of being great fighters in peacetime outside of the war field. But actually they cannot show any talent or military power on the war field. Although Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are always ready to help the demigods headed by Indra, we have no reason to be afraid of them. Krishna Book Chapter 4. The demigods boast uselessly while away from battlefield. Only where there is no fighting can they show their prowess. Therefore from such demigods we have nothing to fear. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:4-36.
Now, of course, the demigods also knew the etiquette of fighting, but we have the example, of course, Kamsa. He's so much condemned because he killed the 7 children of Devaki. But then Indra, he went so far as to enter into the womb of Diti, because he understood that Diti was performing austerities so that she could have a child to kill Indra. So Indra took disguise, and just at the proper moment he entered her womb and tried to kill that embryo. So that's not according to etiquette. So therefore, the demons, they're explaining to Kamsa that, well, when they're not on the battlefield, then they show their prowess. This is no better, actually, than what Kamsa had done. Killing innocent, this is even unborn child. He was trying to abort that child. But when they see you, they run in fear. They can't stand up to your power. And now they're going to give advice, according to the Shastra, why Kamsa should not show any mercy to these demigods.
As far as Lord Vishnu is concerned, he has already hidden himself within the hearts of all living entities, and he cannot come out. As far as Lord Shiva is concerned, he has renounced all activities. He has already entered into the forest. And Lord Brahma is always engaged in different types of austerities and meditation. And what to speak of Indra is a straw in comparison to your strength. Therefore we have nothing to fear from all these demigods. But we must not neglect them, because the demigods are our determined enemies. We must be careful to protect ourselves, to root them out from their very existence. We should just engage ourselves in your service and be always ready for your command. Krishna Book Chapter 4.
Now in the morning, Kamsa didn't call his ministers to round them up to fight. Kamsa just wanted to inform them what Durga Devi had said. But the ministers, they want to fight because they don't want to lose their power. And they want to keep Kamsa as their leader because Kamsa is very powerful. So what they say here, that the demigods must be rooted out from their very existence. Just like when you plant a garden and you have so-called weeds, though there's no such thing as weeds in Ayurveda, everything has a function. But if you want to get rid of a plant, an unwanted plant in a garden, you have to dig it out to the root and pull the root out. Otherwise that root will start growing again and again each time. So this is what the demons want Kamsa to do. They want Kamsa to root out the demigods from the very source of where they're getting their power. That power is coming from Vishnu, but Vishnu is hiding in the heart of all the yogis. Lord Shiva, who's also very powerful, he's retired to the forest. And Lord Brahma, he's in the background there. He's deep in meditation and performing austerities. So we have nothing to fear from these three most powerful demigods. Now, the rest of the demigods and the devotees have to be dealt with.
The rest of the demigods? You said the rest of the demigods?
Yeah.
Have to be dealt with.
Yeah.
As for Lord
I have a plan.
As for Lord Vishnu, he is in seclusion in the core of the hearts of yogis. As for Lord Shiva, he has gone to the forest. And as for Lord Brahma, he is always engaged in austerities and meditation. The other demigods headed by Indra are devoid of prowess. Therefore, you have nothing to fear. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.36. Purport. Kamsa's ministers told Kamsa that all the exalted demigods had fled in fear of him. One had gone to the forest, one to the core of the heart, and one to engage in tapasya. Thus you can be freed from all fear of the demigods. You can be free from all fear of the demigods. They said, just prepare to fight. Nonetheless, because of their enmity, our opinion is that the demigods should not be neglected. Therefore, to uproot them completely, engage us in fighting with them, for we are ready to follow you. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.37. Purport. According to moral instructions, one should not neglect to extinguish fire completely, treat diseases completely, and clear debts completely. Otherwise, they will increase and later be difficult to stop. Therefore, the ministers advised Kamsa to uproot his enemies completely.
Generally, whenever the demigods are being afflicted by the demons, they take shelter of Lord Vishnu. That's their nature. That's why they're demigods. But because Vishnu is now hiding in the heart of the yogis, the demons have nothing to fear of him. Sometimes they also take shelter of Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma. But those two they're not functioning right now. Lord Shiva's busy in meditation in the forest. He's retired. And Lord Brahma, he's performing austerities. So the three most powerful of the demigods, we have nothing to fear. Still, the rest of the demigods, they have to be uprooted. And what Prabhupada says here in the purport, here.
Prabhupada says, Chanakya Pandit has given this example. This fire, death and disease, never think big or small. They are always dangerous. If you take loan from somewhere, interest compounded. One day it will become so big, unmanageable by you. Similarly, fire may be a spark, but gradually it will so increase, blazing fire. Disease also. Now there is little pain. Now if it increases, it becomes tuberculosis. So therefore he has said, never neglect these things, fire, death and disease. They must be extinguished by all means.
So this is coming from Chanakya Pandit, and in other places Prabhupada also says that this is Vedic injunction. So here the demons are using this logic. There's another aspect that we should see here.
You wanted me to fight, to become happy, to get the kingdom, but by killing my own men? You are misleading me. I will not be happy by killing my own men. That is not possible. How you are inducing me? So he said, Nimittani cha pashyami, nimattani cha viparitani pashyami. No, na cha shaknomi avasthatum. I cannot stand here. Let me go back. Take my chariot back. I will not stay here. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Bhagavad-Gita 4.42.
So incidentally, Kamsa, he had given up any desire to harm Vasudeva and Devaki, to kill any more children. He just wanted to observe what Durga Devi had told him. Stop killing these innocent children. But the demons, they were preaching to him, stand and fight. Now a devotee, such as Arjun, he didn't want to kill his family members. He wanted to immediately leave the battlefield. He felt that Krishna was misleading him by telling him to fight, because in the beginning he didn't understand Krishna's plan. So a devotee, when they understand the plan of the Lord, with the weapon of knowledge, armed with yoga, they're ready to do anything that Krishna tells them to do. So Krishna says, stand and fight. Whereas the demon, Kamsa, momentarily, he decided no more fighting, I won't kill anymore, I'm so sorry. He was scared of what the reaction was going to be. But his demoniac ministers, they told him, stand and fight. You have to kill all of these demigods. You have to kill all of the children. So because he was demoniac by nature, he listened to them because they were self-interested. And whatever his nature was being fueled by what they were saying. So the demon, he also stands and fights, but not for Krishna. He stands and fights for his own sense gratification.
The demons continued to say, if there is some disease in the body which is neglected, it becomes incurable. Similarly, when one is not careful about restraining the senses and lets them loose, it is very difficult to control them at all. Therefore, we must be very careful of the demigods before they get too strong to be subdued. Krishna Book Chapter 4. As a disease, if initially neglected, becomes acute and impossible to cure, or as the senses, if not controlled at first, are impossible to control later, an enemy, if neglected in the beginning, later becomes insurmountable. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.38. Regarding your enemy Mr. Lust, I have noted the difficulties, but we should always remember that Krishna is stronger than any demon, and Mr. Lust, or his father, or his grandfather. Nobody can do anything provided we take shelter of Krishna very tightly.
So the demons are using the exact same philosophy from the Vedas to convince Kamsa to do the wrong thing. This is how we can twist the philosophy. So Prabhupada, our enemy is who? Our enemy is lust. And what is lust? Lust is when we turn away from Krishna and we try to enjoy separately from him. But what the demons are trying to convince Kamsa to do is that the demigods who were followers of Lord Vishnu, before they get too strong, they have to be rooted out, just like a disease or just like our senses. See, they're even talking about sense control here, but in exactly the opposite way. So this is demoniac nature. They'll take the philosophy and turn it around for their own sense gratification.
This Mr. Lust thing is from letter
It's
to
a letter
Upendra
to
Prabhu?
Hayagriva.
I agree with you.
Yes.
The foundation of strength of the demigods is Lord Vishnu, because the ultimate goal of all religious principles is to satisfy him. The Vedic injunctions, the Brahmanas, the cows, austerities, sacrifices, performance of charity, distribution of wealth are all for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. Krishna Book Chapter 4. The foundation of all the demigods is Lord Vishnu, who lives and is worshipped wherever there are religious principles, traditional culture, the Vedas, cows, Brahmanas, austerities and sacrifices with proper remuneration. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.39.
So because demons hate Vishnu, therefore they're opposed to all of the supporting aspects of Vedic culture, which includes the Brahmins, the cows, sacrifices, charity, distribution of wealth, anything that's going to satisfy Vishnu, they want to completely wipe out.
Here is a description of Sanatan Dharma, eternal religious principles, which must include Brahmanical culture, Brahmanas, sacrifices and religion. These principles establish the kingdom of Vishnu. Without the kingdom of Vishnu, the kingdom of God, no one can be happy. Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.31. In this demoniac civilization, people unfortunately do not understand the self-interest of human society lies in Vishnu. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.39 purport.
This is why Srila Prabhupada, he said that he only had completed 50% of his work because he wanted to establish the Varnashram system. And when everything is working in society according to the laws and the injunctions of the Supreme Lord, then even this material world, what does material mean? It just means when we are not using something in Krishna's service, but if by following the Vedic injunctions, we're using everything in the Supreme Lord's service, then even this so-called material world becomes Vaikuntha. So this is why Srila Prabhupada said that our temples, they're Vaikuntha. They're not in the material world, because within the temple, everything is centered around pleasing the Supreme Lord in the deity form. All of us are the servants of the Lord, and therefore, just like in Vaikuntha, we're 24 hours a day engaged in His service in love. So this is exactly what the demons wanted to snuff out, because they understood that the devotees, if we kill the devotees, if we kill the cows, if we stop all Vedic yagya, then Vishnu also will die.
Durashaya ye bahirarthamaninaha. Thus they are involved in a hopeless hope. People want to be happy without God consciousness or Krishna consciousness, because they are led by blind leaders who lead human society to chaos. The Asuric adherents of Kamsa wanted to disrupt the traditional condition of human happiness and thus defeat the Devatas, devotees and demigods. Unless the devotees and demigods predominate, the Asuras will increase and human society will be in a chaotic condition. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.39 purport.
So if the demons had read the Srimad Bhagavatam, they would have heard about Maharaj Vena, who tried to do exactly the same thing. He tried to establish himself as the Supreme Lord and stopped all sacrifices, all activities of the Brahmins. He made everyone worship him. And his philosophy was, well, I'm the king, and the king is a representative of the Supreme Lord, so you should worship me. No other worship is required. So this is demoniac mentality. And the sages who came to advise Vena, he called them foolish little children. So then the sages, simply by sound vibration, they killed Maharaj Vena, and from his body they churned and came out Maharaj Prithu, who was the partial incarnation of the Supreme Lord to set society in the proper direction again. So this is what happens when the demons try to establish themselves as the Supreme Lord. Definitely, they will be defeated ultimately by the Supreme Lord.
So let us immediately begin by killing all the Brahmanas who are in charge of Vedic knowledge and the great sages who are in charge of sacrificial ritualistic performances. Let us kill all the cows which are the source of butter, which is so necessary for performing sacrifices. Please give us your permission to kill all these creatures. Krishna Book Chapter 4. O King, we who are your adherents in all respects shall therefore kill the Vedic Brahmanas, the persons engaged in offering sacrifices and performing austerities, and the cows that supply milk, from which is obtained clarified butter, an ingredient of sacrifice. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.40.
Has anyone attended a yajna without the ghee being offered into the fire? No, yajna means ghee. One time in the very early days in San Francisco, they were having a fire sacrifice for a marriage. So Prabhupada was going to attend this and perform the fire sacrifice. But the devotees didn't have much money. So instead of buying butter, because ghee didn't exist in America, we had to make our own ghee from butter by boiling it down. Rather than buying butter, they bought margarine. And they gave that to Prabhupada for performing the fire sacrifice. So margarine is just low-class oil with so many impurities in it. And no matter how much Prabhupada tried, he couldn't get the sticks to light because it wasn't ghee. So in the marriage ceremony, Prabhupada said that this marriage will start off, it'll be a very slow start. Right? So we have to have ghee in order to perform yajnas for the Supreme Lord. And those yajnas, by the performance of the yajnas and offering of ghee and different articles into the fire sacrifice, the Supreme Lord is attracted. And previously, when the pure Brahmins used to perform these yajnas, the demigods would attend, and the Supreme Lord also would sometimes attend to give benedictions. So that means without the fuel, without the ghee, yajnas can't be performed, and then the demons think that Vishnu will starve because the Lord eats through the yajnas and the demigods eat through yajnas. So if we kill the cows, then there won't be any ghee for giving the making the yajnas.
This happened during Yamuna Mataji Gurudas Prabhu's marriage. Actually, the limbs of the transcendental body of Lord Vishnu are the Brahmanas, the cows, Vedic knowledge, austerity, truthfulness, sense and mind control, faithfulness, charity, tolerance and performance of sacrifices. Lord Vishnu is situated in everyone's heart and is the leader of all demigods, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. We think to kill Lord Vishnu is to persecute the great sages and Brahmanas, said the ministers. Krishna Book Chapter 4. The Brahmanas, the cows, Vedic knowledge, austerity, truthfulness, control of the mind and senses, faith, mercy, tolerance and sacrifice are the different parts of the body of Lord Vishnu, and they are the paraphernalia for a godly civilization. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.41.
So the demons, they wanted to kill Vishnu by torturing his different limbs. And that means killing the demigods, stopping the sacrifices, any forms of charity, mind control, truthfulness. By eliminating these different limbs of the Lord, naturally the Lord would die because he would be inflicted with so much pain. So this was the demons' plan. You see, they have full knowledge. They understand everything. They know about Lord Vishnu. They know about all of the divine qualities. But rather than accept them and be successful in life, they want to kill those qualities. They want to kill Vishnu and establish themselves as the supreme enjoyer.
When we offer our obeisances to the personality of Godhead, we say, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagat Hitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. When Krishna comes to establish real perfection in the social order, he personally gives protection to the cows and the Brahmanas. Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha. This is his first interest, because without protection of Brahmanas and cows, there can be no human civilization and no question of happy, peaceful life. Asuras therefore are always interested in killing the Brahmanas and cows. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.41 purport.
So the very thing that the Supreme Lord, Govinda, protects, which are the cows, the go, and the brahmanas, the Brahmins, he's always trying to do welfare for them, is the exact thing that the demons want to kill. This is the demoniac mentality.
Especially in this age, Kali Yuga, cows are being killed all over the world. And as soon as there is a movement to establish Brahmanical civilization, people in general rebel. Thus, they regard the Krishna consciousness movement a form of brainwashing. How can such envious persons be happy in their godless civilization? The Supreme Personality of Godhead punishes them by keeping them in darkness birth after birth and pushing them lower and lower into wretched conditions of hellish life. The Krishna consciousness movement has started a Brahmanical civilization, but especially when it is introduced in the Western countries, the Asuras try to impede it in many ways. Nonetheless, we must push forward this movement tolerantly for the benefit of human society. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.41 purport.
This happened when Srila Prabhupada first established the Gurukula in Dallas, Texas. Because according to Gurukula, the children should live very simply, and from age 5 to 15 they should live in the home of the Guru. So when the government found out about this Gurukula, they made so many complaints against it that it was impossible to have a Gurukula in America, so Prabhupada moved it here to Vrindavan. So what Prabhupada was trying to establish, because there are plenty of Sudras in the world, there are enough Vaishyas, capitalism is based on Vaishya mentality, there are also intellectuals, but what's missing is the head of the body, which are the Brahmins. And according to Brahminical culture, there are rules and regulations. And as soon as Prabhupada tried to establish this Brahminical culture, the atheists became infuriated and they rebelled against this. And they started to make so much propaganda against the Hare Krishna movement. But as Prabhupada said, we always have to fight because there are always asuras trying to stop the Krishna consciousness movement. And these rebellious people, these demons, they're pushed down into lower forms of life, into darkness, so that they don't know anything about the Supreme Lord for an untold number of lifetimes, until finally they again get the association. Maybe they'll hear the holy name, maybe they'll get some prasadam from the devotees, and then they can start their spiritual life again. But it might take millions of lifetimes. So therefore, even as devotees, we have to be very careful to stay very far away from demoniac tendencies.
Lord Vishnu, the super soul within the core of everyone's heart, is the ultimate enemy of the Asuras. It is therefore known as Asuradvit. He is the leader of all demigods, because all of them, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, exist under his protection. Great saintly persons, sages and Vaishnavas also depend upon him. To persecute the Vaishnavas, therefore, is the only way to kill Vishnu. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.42.
So during Yudhisthira Maharaj's Rajasuya sacrifice, it was unanimously decided amongst the Vaishnavas that Krishna should receive the Agra Puja. And even the demigods came to attend this. You'll see here in attendance, there's Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Narada Muni, all the great sages came, and they all came for this wonderful opportunity to worship the Supreme Lord. So the demons, understanding how all the demigods and the Vaishnavas, they worship the Lord, they get their power from the Lord, everything comes from him. Therefore, they wanted to kill the Vaishnavas.
The demigods and the Vaishnavas especially are part and parcel of Supreme Lord Vishnu, because they are always obedient to his orders. Om Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surayaha. The demoniac followers of Kamsa thought that if Vaishnavas, saintly persons and sages were persecuted, the original body of Vishnu would naturally be destroyed. Thus they decided to suppress Vaishnavism. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.42 purport.
And Kamsa's listening. He's hearing what they have to say because they're flattering him. They're telling him, you're the most powerful, only you can do this. On your order, we'll help you. We'll kill all the children. We'll persecute all the Vaishnavas, the Brahmins. We'll kill all the cows. You be our leader. So they were puffing him up so much that he completely forgot about the night before when he was repentant for his sinful activities.
The Asuras perpetually struggle to persecute the Vaishnavas because the Asuras do not want Vaishnavas to spread. Vaishnavas preach only devotional service, not encouraging karmis, jnanis and yogis. Because if one wants to liberate oneself from material conditioned life, one must ultimately become a Vaishnava. Our Krishna consciousness movement is directed with this understanding, and therefore the Asuras always try to suppress it. 10.4.42 purport.
Because the yogis, the jnanis and the karmis, they haven't attained liberation, and they can only attain liberation when they surrender to the Supreme Lord Vishnu. That means that they have no entrance into the spiritual world. And that therefore means that they're being forced to try to enjoy within this material world. Now the karmis, karmi doesn't mean sinful people. Karmis means people who are following the karma kanda section of the Vedas. They're engaging in activities so that they can get punya, so that they can be elevated to the heavenly planets. But even after elevation, they have to come down again. The jnanis, they're trying to negate all of these things and just understand the absolute. And the yogis, they're trying to get mystic powers to make them very powerful, supernaturally powerful, but it's all within the material world. So these three types of materialists, karmis, jnanis, and even yogis, they haven't surrendered to the Supreme Lord. And therefore they can't understand what a Vaishnava is. And out of envy, these demons, they want to kill the Vaishnavas, they want to ultimately kill Vishnu so that they can have full enjoyment without any type of suppression from the Supreme Lord while living within the material world.
Thus, being advised by the demonic ministers, Kamsa, who was from the very beginning the greatest rascal, decided to persecute Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, being entrapped by the shackles of all-devouring eternal time. Krishna Book Chapter 4. Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam durmantribhi Kamsaha saha sammantrya durmatihi Brahma himsam hitam mene kala pashavrato asuraha. Shukadeva Goswami continued, thus having considered the instructions of his bad ministers, Kamsa, who was bound by the laws of Yamaraj and devoid of good intelligence because he was a demon, decided to persecute the saintly persons, the Brahmanas, as the only way to achieve his own good fortune. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.43.
Now I put the Sanskrit in this sloka because there's some very interesting words here. Evam dur mantri bhi. So these dur mantri, that means the bad ministers, the dur mantris of Kamsa. Saha samantriya durmati. So samantriya means he listened to everything they said and he analyzed it all completely. But how did he analyze it? With his durmati, with his bad intelligence. And he came to the conclusion that for the highest welfare, he should do Brahma Hingsa. That means he should inflict injury, do Hingsa to the Brahmanas. And this is because he was a demon. And what does a demon mean? Kala pasavrito asura. Asura means that he's covered, he's blinded by this time factor, which is being controlled ultimately by Yamaraj. So demons, they are under the injunction, the influence, they're being watched by Yamaraj. And when everything is ready, Yamaraj, time, this kala, yes, kala is time, then everything will be lost at the time of death, and they'll have to meet Yamaraj to suffer the reactions of their sinful activities.
Srila Lochandas Thakur has sung, Apana karama bhunjaye shamana kohoye lochana dasa. Instead of taking good instructions from the sages and the shastras, godless non-devotees act whimsically according to their own plans. Actually, however, no one has his own plans because everyone is bound by the laws of nature and must act according to his tendency in material conditional life. Therefore, one must change one's own decision and follow the decision of Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Then one is rescued from punishment by Yamaraj. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.43 purport.
So we take birth in different species according to our inclinations. We were hearing about the scorpion a few days ago. So there's just one little story. A scorpion had to get across a river. So a horse offered to carry him on his back. And while the horse was walking across the river, the scorpion started biting him on the back. And the horse says, I'm taking you across the river, why are you biting me? And the scorpion says, I can't help it, it's my nature. So some people, their nature is simply demoniac. And that's developed. It doesn't happen accidentally. It's because we make wrong choices. We listen to the wrong people. If we listen to the advice of the saintly people, our gurus, the sadhus, what's written in the scriptures, then we don't fall into these demoniac species of life, which is where Yamaraj throws us as a punishment. So we have to be very careful. Even now, we're on the platform of devotional service. We can still fall down into demoniac activities if we don't listen to the instructions of the saintly people. So every day we have to be very careful to very carefully follow all the instructions.
Kamsa was not uneducated. It appears from his talks with Vasudeva and Devaki that he knew all about laws of nature. But because of his association with bad ministers, he could not make a clear decision about his welfare. Therefore, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 22:54 says, Sadhu Sangha Sarva Shastra Koy, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hoy. If one desires his real welfare, he must associate with devotees and saintly persons, and in this way rectify the material condition of his life. Srimad Bhagavatam 10.4.43 purport.
So this is Maharaj Prachini Barisat. By the mercy of Narada Muni, he was shown that the karma kandya path will simply lead to repeated birth and death, because the Brahmins who were advising him to engage in all types of sacrifices were actually misguiding him. So we can take advice from so many different people. We have to choose whose advice we're going to follow. And therefore, we have to hear from a pure devotee. And that's why Srila Prabhupada took so much effort to write his books, so that at least for the next 10,000 years, we will be able to take the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, and we can always test the check and balance. What Srila Prabhupada says, what the Vedic scriptures say, and what the sadhus say. All three will be exactly the same. And that's the way we should live our life, by following sadhu, shastra, and guru. Hare Krishna.